Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. You know, there are certain foods that have ingredients that sort of ping the taste buds so strong that you can become addicted. That's according to addiction specialist Dr. Cali Estes, who's joining us on the program to talk about food addiction, how it's different from overeating, signs, symptoms, and her own experience with food addiction. She's also launching a new program in the fight against food addiction. Thank you so much for joining us here on Health Professional Radio, Dr. Estes.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, are you an addiction specialist, a food addiction specialist?
So all of the above. So I started off, I didn't pick this industry, it picked me because I was a food addict. And back then in the 90s, there was no such thing. So you either, had eating disorder, which was either bulimia or anorexia, or you were just fat. So when I went to the counselor, I didn't qualify for bulimia or anorexia. So she said, well, you're just fat. So sent me to the fat doctor. And the fat doctor said, okay, well, you overeat, so let's put you on diet pills. And then I became a diet pill addict. I was still a food addict, but now I managed it by taking lots of diet pills and still overeating and eating to numb and still doing all the bad behavior. Mm-hmm. So over time, I studied both, the relation between drug and alcohol addiction and food addiction. And I sort of morph the two together, and I treat both sides. I guess
addiction is addiction. I know the details differ a bit, but do the same things that trigger, an opioid or a nicotine addiction, are they the same things in a food addiction?
Yes, it's very similar. So food addiction and drug addiction and alcohol addiction, you're all doing the same thing. You're numbing out. You're trying to get rid of an uncomfortable feeling. That's why you hear the term eat your feelings. Very similar to, well, I don't like how I feel, I'm going to go get some heroin and shoot up. Very similar. So with food, it's just easier to get because it is legal, it's everywhere, and you have to eat, versus you don't have to have heroin, you don't have to have cocaine, and it's not legal. So it's a lot easier. They also, both heroin, cocaine, and food have issues with reward deficiency syndrome. So if you have low dopamine or low serotonin, you're going to start to crave certain things. That's why you crave carbohydrates. It's why you crave sugar. It's why you crave alcohol. It's even why you crave opiates. If your serotonin and dopamine is low, you're going to gravitate towards those items. And you'll hear a lot of people say, well, I'm craving pizza. Well, you're not really craving pizza. You're craving the carbohydrates, which then boost the serotonin and dopamine, the happy chemical. So I tell people, before you reach for the food, do 25 squats, because 25 squats will boost the serotonin and dopamine quicker and faster than the drugs. And then tell me what you're craving. And a lot of people will go, well, I'm not hungry anymore, because they weren't hungry in the first place. Their serotonin and dopamine was low, and they were reaching for something to boost it by way of going, oh, pizza sounds great, or Ben and Jerry's sounds great. So it's very interesting on both sides how similar they are.
Speak to those who think that food, a food addiction is the same as overeating, and that an addiction to food is all psychological.
Okay, completely different things. So overeating basically means you have larger portion sizes than your body can handle. So if you make a fist with your left hand, that's the size of your stomach. That's the size of what your portion should be when you eat. Now, in America, we do triple and quadruple that size for a meal, but it's not good for your stomach. So that's overeating. So if you're eating more than that at a meal, you're stretching your stomach out, which then causes more overeating, and it continues that way. That's very different than having an emotional feeling or a mental feeling of being uncomfortable and then reaching for something, going, if I eat this cookie, I'm not going to feel sad. Or if I eat this cookie, I'm not going to think about my job that I lost or my boyfriend that broke up with me. This cookie is going to fix that for me. And then they eat the cookie, and while they're eating the cookie, they feel better. So it takes maybe a minute to eat a cookie. When they're done eating the cookie, they feel sad again. And they say, well, I don't feel any better. I need another cookie. So it's a distraction, and by use of food. Now they have another cookie, then they have another one, and then they get a case of the Screw-Its, and we say, well, I had 5 cookies. I might as well have the whole bag of cookies. And they eat the whole thing, and now they feel sick because it's too much food, sick because it's too much sugar. They feel guilt and shame because they overate the entire bag of cookies, and they want to hide. And then they may continue eating because they really have low self-esteem and feel bad about themselves. So the difference there is an overeater would eat the whole bag of cookies and not feel guilt and shame. And they would go, you know what? I ate it. So what? Tomorrow I'll diet. And they've already forgotten about it. But a food addict is going to obsess over the bag of cookies for a week or two, going, I can't believe I ate that. I'm a horrible person. I'm so fat. What's wrong with me? There's a mental obsession over it. And then they might restrict their food and say, well, I'm not going to eat anything but apples, carrots, celery, and chicken for 2 weeks to make up for the cookies. There's like a mental game they play. The overeater won't do that. The overeater will say, okay, so I overate Thanksgiving dinner. Tomorrow, I'm not going to eat as much, and I'm going to exercise. And then that's it. They're done. There's no mental obsession game or guilt and shame.
How was it for you? I do understand that you have struggled with food addiction. How was it for you personally?
Very similar. So I would eat because I grew up in a household that didn't have alcohol, but my mother would eat. So whether she was happy, sad, angry, she would basically eat a whole cake. And that's what I learned. And then when I was in college, I had gone out with my girlfriends, and I was always the girl that came home with nobody. I was always the girl that came home with no date because I was overweight. And I was sitting on the floor eating cake with my hands, and there was cake on me, cake on the walls, cake on the dog. And my roommate walked in, and she was like, wow, there's something wrong with you. And I didn't realize there was something wrong with me until then. And that's when I said, this isn't right. And I started to study it. And I started to say, why am I doing this? And then it was rooted in childhood, because this is what the coping mechanism my mother taught me. This is what you do. And I tried to diet. It didn't work, and it doesn't for most food addicts, because as soon as you restrict, you binge eat. And then once I studied addiction, and I went, wow, this is an addiction to food. It's what I use as a coping mechanism, and I got to the root cause of why I was doing it. And I fixed why I was doing it. I didn't reach for food anymore because I didn't have to. And it's very similar to the way I treat drugs and alcohol. You get to the root cause of something and you don't have the bad behavior anymore.
Now let's talk a bit about foods that actually have these ingredients that are designed to addict us to them.
Well, one of these days I'm going to get sued. So anything with a drive-through, let's start there. If you're driving through to get your dinner, it's not food. There's chemical additives in that burger, ice cream, French fries, Coca-Cola, whatever, that make you want to have more. It's very highly palatable on the tongue. So whether you have one French fry, suddenly you want to supersize it. You want all the French fries because your tongue goes, this is good. Your mind goes, this is amazing. And then you want more. There's also anything in a bag, box, or can is usually not good for you. So I tell my clients, I want you to shop on the outside of the grocery store, not up and down the aisles. Up and down the aisles are food-like products. If you can't pronounce the ingredients, it's got something in there to make you want more. And that is not healthy. So it's usually culture shock for them when they go shopping.
Is it because the stores are designed that way deliberately, or is it a convenience thing for the stores, a storage thing?
So I think when you first walk in, if you notice, you always have some baked good in your face as soon as you walk in. Cookies, candies, cake, whatever. And generally the baking department is just right there. And you're thrown into it. And from there, it's, you see cheese and what have you. But when you go up and down the aisles, because most people like to do that, they want to see what products you have. Most of the items that are highly addictive have prime real estate on the shelf. They're the ones you can see at eye level.
Okay.
So next time you go to the grocery store and you're going up and down the aisles, look at eye level and then look way, 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 way down and way, 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 way up. The healthier stuff is way up top and way at the bottom. The stuff that's highly addicting will be eye level. And then anything that's ever buy one, get one free is probably not a good item because higher quality items cost a lot more. So if you're buying an organic cheese versus regular cheese, you're going to see the regular cheese is cheaper. But if you flip it over, it's not just milk. It's got 20,000 ingredients in it. So you have to be able to read the labels. You have to know what you're looking at. And then you have to know, where to look on the shelves and what aisles to stay out of.
This is fascinating, and I know that 10 minutes is just not even scratching the surface. I mean, I've got so many questions. Where can our listeners go and get some more information? And where can they go if somebody who's listening now may think that they're dealing with a food addiction?
Sure, they can give us a call. We're at 1-800-706-0318, or they can go on the website, IamTheAddictionsCoach.com or CaliEstes.com, and they can click on any of those. And social media, it's Dr. Cali Estes on Instagram, at The Addictions Co. on Twitter, and Dr. Cali Estes on Facebook. And just PM us, DM us, ask us questions. We'll be more than happy to help you and offer a free 15-minute consultation to your listeners to see if they do have food addiction and go from there.
Thank you so much for being on Health Professional Radio.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Transcripts and audio of this program and this conversation with Dr. Cali Estes can be found on healthprofessionalradio.com.au and also on hpr.fm. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen in, download at SoundCloud, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com, Health Professional Radio.